18. David ran through the wood. He knew he was being followed, as usual. He was sure the witch was talking to him. He tried to close his mind against the thought waves. All he wanted to do now was to ring Scotland Yard and have all responsibility taken away from him. But she continued to break his privacy. Not that he had much of that left. He felt as if everyone were using his mind as a cesspool to dump all their filth in. His body jogged up and down as he forced one leg in front of another. Then he understood what she was saying, over and over.
You will go mad tomorrow. You will go mad. Quite mad tomorrow. You will go mad, 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 mad. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. You, mad, mad, mad.
Jippo watched the desperate policeman. He was pleased. Once he was sure that Hanlin had left the wood, Jippo slithered through the warm undergrowth until he reached a small wooden hut. He opened the door. The black furnace of trapped air stung his face. Quickly, he unslung his bow and notched an arrow into the gut. 5 bats creaked out of the hut towards him, so he loosed the arrow. The bat found itself quite dead, arrowed through its silken belly to the hut door. Got you, me little bastard. Got you. I'll get them all. A copper's no exception. Here comes another. 4 more bats twirled their wings in the moonlight like oiled leaves on froth. Jippo hit 2 of them with 1 arrow. It ripped off the first head before tearing into the lungs of the second. Oh, I know things. I know everything. You don't go lonely in woods in summer without knowing things. I know a killer when I see one. I know who killed our Billy. I know. He talked to the torn bats. Another member of the Leather Air Force flapped towards him. He loosed an arrow, but missed. This put him in a bad mood. He ripped the dead bats off his arrows before cleaning them, then returned the arrows to his quiver. Then he ran, with a scrunched bat in his hand, to an oak tree on the sea edge of the wood. He listened for a moment to the flute and the throbbing feet, but he ignored them. He opened a small purse which he carried in his jeans back pocket. Having selected a bronze hat pin, he stuck it through the bat and pinned it to the tree. That'll worry him, that will. No one has any idea of the lovely way of killing. Perhaps I'm gently cracked, but I can still stir things up. Tomorrow I'll shake him. Shake him. Having surveyed his handiwork and given the bat a final wing straightening, he disappeared into the hot dark. The inspector had been standing outside the telephone box for about a quarter of an hour. He knew he'd ring in the end, but he was teasing himself with the possibility that he wouldn't. He'd fallen into a major decline. As a boy, he would have never have dithered. But then again, he would have never given in like he had tonight. Oh, he could still fight crime, but he couldn't find mental corruption, bordering on the supernatural. He went into the booth, dialed Chief Inspector Peter Thornton's private residence. He heard the telephone ring at the other end. In his imagination, he could see his super in the middle of a humping session, Thornton's sweaty forehead reeking of tobacco and curry as he nibbled the nipples of his Russian girlfriend. The telephone continued to ring. At last, the receiver was wrenched off its cradle and the sticky roar of his super exploded in his ear.
Who the bloody hell's that at this time of night? Is that you, Hanlin? I'll have you out of your diarrhea here.
David pulled himself together and shouted back.
It is me, sir, and I'm handing in my resignation. Now, don't blow your top. I haven't the time or the energy to listen. Hanlin!
Screeched Thornton.
Hanlin, what the... I said shut up and listen, sir. and I meant shut up and listen. A ritual murder occurred this afternoon. A young boy, Billy Thompson, was found dead under the usual oak tree with a hat pin thrust through his left ear into his brain. Not very nice. Why in the name of Leicester Square Urinal didn't you ring me before? I've told you. Hey, what did you say about handing in your sanguinary resignation? So, sir, I want you to send me down tracker dogs, 2 patrol calls at least, and let the press know. I want this village blown sky high. I want to terrify these bastards down here into voluntary confession. You want?
howled his superior.
What it got to fornicating do with what you want? We're not running the whoring police force for your benefit. I have to carry the can back if you bugger it up. So you better be pretty on your facts, or I'll make you crudding suffer. To what I've been through, Chief, anything you did would be a holiday. By the way, I refuse to retract my resignation. I'll see this case through, unless, of course, you'd like me to stop now, and then I'm going to apply for a librarian's post in the Scilly Isles. The reason I didn't ring before was that I hadn't enough evidence to make them sweat. And what I witnessed tonight, even old Compton Street Club cinemas would be impressed with. But now I realise I can't deal with it on my own. Oh yes, laugh if you want to, but even you, Chief, would find your bowels turning to water here. Don't you swear at me, you middle-aged basket. So, if your men don't find me around, it's because I'm going to have one last attempt my way, whether you like it or not. No, don't interrupt me. I said don't. Your men can pick up anyone in this village and charge them with absolutely anything and hold them indefinitely. And I mean anyone and anything, except of course the vicar and Mrs. Spark. He's married to a witch, by the way. She's high on the suspect list. The witch, not the vicar. Please don't blaspheme, sir. Your sexy lady won't like it. Now, give her all you've got, if you've got anything left to give, that is.
And David hung up. He felt marvellous. He'd been wanting to do that for years. He performed a quick scissor movement with his legs, made a vague jump at the moon, and whistled his way down the high street. He no longer had any authority to do anything. Wonderful. Oh, he knew he would get a bollocking from his super. He knew Thornton would demand him to take his resignation back. But he wouldn't. He was nearly 40, barely broke, and just this side of a mental breakdown. And that's the way he wanted to stay. The yew trees in St. Peter's churchyard trembled. The dead were eating the roots. There was a bitter scent by the churchyard wall. David paused under a yew tree and instinctively peered into the graveyard. Morbid fascination, perhaps. He was always trying to calm his subconscious fears by daring himself to face the probability of the supernatural. He didn't believe in arbitrary powers outside humanity. He didn't believe that good or evil were independent forces either. And yet, what had happened to him tonight was more than being attacked by other people's minds. They had something extra to bombard him with. Perhaps they'd harnessed other dimensional power. Maybe they'd opened up their subconscious stream and allowed the history of concentrated evil in. Centuries of man's evil waiting in corners of rooms and angles of trees, waiting to climb into willing minds. Their power was simply based on the darkness lying around them. They compressed it into their imaginations. Either that, or Hanlin was going mad. What happens, he thought, if nothing has happened? What happens if it's all the products of my brain? What happens then? As he peered at the tombstones on the church spire, he was aware of someone standing over Deanne's grave. The figure was hardly distinguishable from the creeping ivy. Quietly, David vaulted over the wall. His fear was quenched by his excitement. Placing his desert boots one in front of the other and avoiding twigs, he maneuvered himself until he was some 6 feet away from the figure. David stepped behind the shadow weaving of 2 yew trees, their trunks tightened in a tree embrace. "I'll give our grave visitor a small fright. Yes, that's what I'll do." Smoothly he shook one of the overhanging branches. The leaves rippled together like tin foil. The branch complained and shadows stalked over the grave visitor. The visitor felt the shadows hit his neck. So he bent down and picked up a bucket-like object from between his feet. David creaked another bough and then swung it wildly through the leaves. It hissed like boiling water on cold glass. The visitor seemed unimpressed by David's ghost performance. He just continued doing what he was doing, whatever that was. Having suffered supernatural indignity long enough, the figure spoke without even looking round. "Oh, do please transport yourself from the murky shadows. It's so boring." David realized that the visitor was his favourite, the Reverend White extraordinaire. His spooking had come to a close, so he sauntered out into the moonlight. He looked down to see exactly what the Reverend was holding. It was a rusty old watering can. The Reverend set it between his feet to greet his guest. David spoke first. He knew if he didn't get his questions in now, he wouldn't have a chance later. The Reverend's main vice was uncontrolled, highfalutin chat. Though why question him? David thought. My official function as a policeman terminated 10 minutes ago. Well, I'm curious. Secretly, I'd like to solve the odd mystery, and it's bound to be odd. Exactly what are you doing, Reverend? Desecrating Diane's grave? The Reverend laughed. Everyone in this village always laughed before they lied. It was part of their style. Watering the flowers on the graves, my dear Inspector. My dear Inspector was a lie for a start. How nice for you, Reverend. I would have thought that you would have had something better to do. Religious flagellation. I beg your pardon. Religious flagellation of your flock to begin with. For your flock needs flagellating because it's bloody evil. You see, Inspector, I have to water the flowers on the graves. This heat would kill them. And we've got enough dead around here with any encouragement from me. But that's not the real reason I'm here. I'll bet it's not. The real reason is that I actually came to water the dead themselves. You what? He's a complete nutter, this one. Nutty as a Cadbury's. Oh yes, you see, the dead get very lonely after midnight. No one comes to see them but me, so I bestow a little of my dewy leisure on them. David groaned. If only he'd gone straight to bed like a good boy. He would have missed all this. Instead, he moved from one lot of nutters to the next. Well, now I'm here, I might as well fulfill the odd police function, he thought. It was strange how years of police questions took over. All the old inquiries tumbled out. But David was no longer interested in the answers. He was simply fulfilling a function. He stood outside himself, outside the graveyard, outside England. At last he was completely himself. The answer didn't matter. And yet, there was always and yet. Even having acclimatized himself to failure, there were still areas of his personality that demanded success. The conflict went on. The gravestones understood. Under them was out and peace. No complexes, only decomposition. Where were you at 3 o'clock this afternoon? Near the giant oak tree? Of course I was. I always take my constitutionals there after half a bottle of Sandman's port. Naturally, I'm only being spiritually humorous, if you follow the alcoholic pun. Less of the linguistics and more of the alibi, if you please, insisted the inspector. Well, since you asked me so nicely, I saw someone running away from the oak tree. Who? Well, I think it was a man, though one can never ascertain correctly these days. Anyway, the runner wore trousers. What did he look like? Well, like a man. That's, of course, if he wasn't a woman. I'm afraid my sight is a little blurred over long distances. That's why I'm unsure of the sexual possibilities. So you must have been the first person to see the body after the murder? Well, I suppose so. Unless, of course, you were the murderer. Are you daring to? Well, if you weren't responsible, why didn't you report what you'd seen immediately? Well, you never asked me to. If you remember, you didn't tell me you were an officer of the law. You wouldn't trust me with your identity. I had to find out in the public lavatory. Library, from Mrs. Spark. She told me. Well, I surmised. If he's clever enough to find his murderer without any divine assistance, let him do just that. All right, I'm sorry, etc., but now please tell me all you know. Well, I've told you. I saw this personage run away, I discovered Billy's body, and that's all. How do you think he was killed? I have no idea. Surely that's your job. The Reverend grinned. If you wish to interrogate me further, please kindly do it in the morning. Unlike the dead, I need my sleep. He grinned again and retired towards the vicarage. David caught him up. Look, Reverend, you're obviously far better informed than you pretend. I'm sure you know who the murderer is. And you're protecting her, aren't you? But it's a woman, isn't it? The local witch? I know you won't give her away, but allow me to give you some advice. Tomorrow morning, Scotland Yard will take this village by storm. They'll put it through the 3rd degree, and they don't have any humane methods. Oh no, they go in for the strict interrogation, and it's much rougher and tougher than the newspaper stories you've read. They'll beat this village to a pulp. Now, I came here to help, to try and understand. But apparently no one wants helping or understanding, so now you've got the SS troops instead, and they'll treat the guilty and innocent alike until they're satisfied who's who. I'm telling you this because it's your job as a priest to advise your sheep. Well, I suggest before 11 o'clock tomorrow morning you advise them to relinquish the murderer to us. And then, perhaps our sanitary department will forget the whole thing. Otherwise, I'll personally see that sadism and lechery are thrashed out with a big stick. And you'll come under the hammer as well. Because you know what's going on here, don't you? The orgies, etc., don't you? Well? The Reverend was unimpressed. Admittedly, some of my flock do play childish games sometimes, but I will punish them all by giving them a sermon concerning their naughtiness this Sunday. Having said this, the Reverend disappeared into the vicarage. David was left with the graveyard. Even with the Reverend there, he had found the ghost kingdom disturbing, but with him gone, he found it unbearable. He ran down the graveyard path to the high street. He prayed that the Reverend would not take his advice. He wanted this village to suffer. Really suffer. On the beach, the dancing had stopped. Listlessly, they put out the fire with handfuls of seawater. They buried the stinking guts of the horse under the sand. Well under. Everyone joined in. The moon remained hot and immune to the human shuffling. Then they brushed the remains of the fire into the sand and proceeded to sweep any telltale evidence away with branches. When they were satisfied that the sand was only the sand and the sea was only the sea, they hunched towards the woods. They were in no hurry. They knew the morning would be sharp. Slowly, David climbed up to his bedroom. He was in no hurry, just exceptionally tired. As he passed the Sparks room, he heard the hacksaw of Mr. Sparks snoring. On reaching his bedroom landing, he was surprised to see a light under his door. He listened. Nothing. He whipped open the door and waited. "Do come in, old man. Where the hell have you been?" He recognized the voice. From where? He edged into the room, and there, lying on his bed, was Tom Jefferson, forensic expert. "Well, close the door, old boy. After all, it is your room. I've been here for the last couple of hours. Your landlord let me in and then went to bed. He seemed used to the idea of police all over the place." David switched the light off. "Excuse me, Jefferson, do you mind if we sit in the moonlight? I can't bear the electric light in my eyes without my sunglasses, and 2 o'clock in the morning's a funny time to wear sunglasses. I know it's one of my foibles, but I would be obliged if you'd indulge me." "Sure, as I said, it's your room." "Sorry to have dragged you down here. There's really no need for you now that I think about it. There's unlikely to be much left to examine. Have you been to the hospital? Been through the boy's clothes, etc.? "Yes, there's nothing much. Death was caused by some sharp object being thrust in the left ear." "I know." David handed Jefferson the hat pin from his lapel. "This?" "You've been clumsy, old boy," Jefferson said, taking the pin. "I mean, what the hell are your fingerprints doing all over it? I mean, that's clumsy, that is." "I know. I think I've had about 5 brainstorms since I've been here. It's surprising I haven't lost the pin. I've resigned, by the way. No, don't say anything. Was the boy sexually assaulted?" "You resigned?" "Was he?" "What?" "Oh no, just killed. They've given me an annex room to do a thorough examination of the body and clothes. I only rattled through them when I arrived, hoping for some obvious clue. I thought you'd be more help than you have been, but there you are, that's the game. I'm sorry about being so clumsy, Jefferson." "Oh, that's all right, it's your neck. From what I hear of you recently, it's typical." Jefferson was a bald-headed naval type in his early 50s, and efficient as they come. When he smiled, as he was doing now, his yellow false teeth didn't smile with him. It was rather disconcerting when he'd been clumsy. David let him down the stairs. "Jefferson, if you could tell the boy's mother the truth, I'd be grateful. It would be better from you than me. Explain the delay." "But I didn't know there was a delay, old boy." David ushered him into the passage. "You'll think of something. You're so efficient. You'll never let the side down, will you? So I know you'll think of something." Neither Jefferson's teeth or mouth grinned this time. David shut the door in his face and returned to his room. He pulled himself tiredly onto the bed. "Might as well make my last report," he thought. He looked open his hold-all. It had been tampered with. At the bottom of the case was the usual bunch of garlic flowers, a broken crucifix, and a broken arrow. He searched the case for a signature to the handiwork. Of course, it could be anyone. The occultist limited imagery was becoming very boring. If only they could think of some original way to express themselves, it wouldn't be so bad, he thought. At the bottom he found the photograph of himself and the little girl playing on the lawn together. He'd no idea how it had climbed from his inside pocket to the case. Then he discovered that all his wood sculptures were missing. All except the paper knife, which he had had in his pocket. The final wrench. Quickly he moved to the window. It was open to capacity. When he left earlier in the evening, it had only been ajar. Of course, it could be an inside job. Mother or daughter. Or Jippo. Anybody. And he was fed up with anybody. He slumped onto the bed with the photograph in his hand. The familiar spring twanged against his shoulder blade. His mind was a funfair without the fun. Bright noises and creaking lights with failure at the centre. His willpower was split. He wanted to retire to a library, but he also wanted to squash the rotten fruit in this village. Resting his sweaty head on the pillow, he studied the photograph. "I've failed you, little girl. Yes, I'd said I'd revenge you, but I've given in. Oh, I'll sleep tonight, all right. They'll know they've nothing to fear from me now. There'll be no nightmares. I'm my own anticlimax. I'm haunted by myself. Tired. Tired. You were a lovely kid, pale hair and laughing." He tried to stop himself, but it was useless. The bitter tears forced themselves through his eyelashes. They hung like irritating tassels on the end of his nose. His mauve eyes lost their colour. They went dull like frozen flesh. He always embarrassed himself when he cried. His Puritan conscience told him it was girlish, but he couldn't stop the tears now. Then he began to sob. The whole of his body ached under the torrent. He lost control. The dam broke. Desperation took over. He stuffed a handkerchief in his mouth in order not to wake the house. This is what they do when epilepsy comes, he thought. It stops you biting your tongue off. Another sob compelled him to hug his chest. He didn't hear the intruder. Anna swayed in the doorway in her bare fur. Instinctively, she wrapped her long arms around him. There was no doubt this man itched her where it hurt. Not absolute lust either. He was like her, always splashing out of his depth.
"Get out of my room. All right, you've beaten me. What's worse? You've not just beaten the policeman, you've eaten the man away, all because you lied. I've always been very attracted to you. You could have helped me sterilize this cesspool, but no, you had to swim, eat and fornicate in the excrement yourself. You should disgust yourself like you disgust me. None of you have any idea what you're doing, by Christ." David thrust the tear-stained photograph into her hands. "This little girl could have been like one of the monsters you initiated. But she wasn't. No, she was sweet. Laughing and loving she was. So what happened? I'll tell you. A grown-up version of one of your monsters came along and staked her to the kitchen table with a carving knife. She's the nearest thing I've ever had to a daughter. Not very near, maybe. I'm the kind who's always best with other people's children, I suppose. But I promised myself and her that I'd get the killer. Well, I haven't kept that promise." David fastened his teeth on a sharp sob. He grappled for breath, then stumbled on. "No, I've failed as usual. I'm not torn by that, though, only by the futility. Well, I've finished. Don't try and put those cuddle arms round me. You don't mean it. You're a little whore." It was strange that though Anna was very proud of her title, she found it very bitter in David's mouth. She dearly wanted to seduce him into bed with her. She knew that she could relax his tensions, half of which she was sure, in his case, were only sexual frustrations. She didn't really want the sex now, just the company and the sensitivity. Soon, she knew she would have to experiment with God. Sexuality alone was acid. "Come on, David. You know I want you. Not just this way either. Whatever you think, I want you. And you're the same as me, you know." He jerked to his feet and refastened himself. "How could I make love to you?" he shouted. "How? You could be a murderess." Her eyes widened. "You must be ill, David." "Am I? More likely you are. Well, prove me wrong. Why do you corrupt the children, eh? What smutty kicks do you get out of it? Does it help your sexual power complex? Oh yes, corruption is fascinating, but one has to be pretty snaky to resort to corrupting kids. Now, if you'd corrupted me, a policeman in his line of duty, well, that at least would have been a minor triumph. But oh no, you prefer to pervert unformed minds, don't you? And you're very capable of killing too. I'm sure of that. Well, aren't you?" David grabbed a hank of Anna's hair and shook her like a dead rabbit. Then he hit her. Then he hit her again. The first 3 swings across the face and the nape of the neck made her breath hiss.
but the fourth blow crunched on the bridge of her nose. He was hardly aware of what he was doing now. Pure instinct. He smashed her again across the nose. Blood exploded. The nose was pouring carmine. It splattered over the white cloak. She screamed with shock more than anything else. David was stunned. He had a swelling oval of her blood on his wrist and knuckles. She screamed again,